So very similarly to Photoshop, Illustrator has the same look and feel. So I've opened up and started a new image, and I'm just going to show you a general layout here. So on the top, just like Photoshop, we have our options, where we save as, we can do things like edit. But one of the first things you're going to realize is that there are some drastic differences. There are things like effects, which are kind of like the filters in Photoshop. But you're going to notice that some of the options you had in Photoshop just aren't here in Illustrator. So on the left-hand side, we have our basic menu. We have things like our selector tools, which are our two mouses. We have a magic wand, just like Photoshop. We've got a lasso. We've got some drawing tools, our type tool. Now notice when I click on one of these tools, like the type tool, the options don't appear at the top. They actually appear on the right-hand side in our properties. So it's just something to pay attention to. Obviously, just like Photoshop, when you hold one of these down, you can see different options, and you'll notice there are different options versus Photoshop. But all of your properties are on the left-hand side. We've got a line tool. We can draw shapes. Paintbrush. This is for our puppet warp, which is just like Photoshop, the way that we did it. And then we have, can select a gradient. We have an eyedropper, a symbol sprayer, and some other things. And this is how we choose our colors. All right. On the right-hand side, obviously, we have our properties for the tool we selected. We have our layers. And we have libraries, which we're not going to get into. We're not going to need them for this project, so you're not going to need those. But really, you can store various objects that you've already created to reuse them, like symbols and stuff like that. So, for example, if you have created let's take the Nike logo. So Nike creates their logo one time. They don't want to have to recreate it every time they're in Illustrator, so they create a symbol, and it's just stored in their library. So whenever they need it, they can just pull it out and drag it right onto the screen. We're not going to need to do that in here. Layers function the exact same way that they do in Photoshop. However, the one interesting thing about Illustrator is that you really don't need layers unless you're doing a big project, because every time you do something in Illustrator, I'm going to draw a few different things. There we go. So every time you do something in Illustrator, it's put on its own layer per se, or artboard. So everything is going to be, even though we're in layer one is comprised of numerous layers. In fact, if I click my selection tool and click on this, I'm only selected one part of this object. You can see, double click here, you can see that within layer one, I go to the line. And you can see that here. Everything is technically on its own layer. So unlike Photoshop, you don't need to create a layer every time you do something. However, the larger your image, you are going to have layers for organization. But technically, everything is on its own layer in Illustrator, which is very interesting. All right, thank you.